Awesome. Okay. And actually, I probably won't be able to see you, Fernando, because the way my screen is set up. Just give me a heads up if I'm down to like a minute or something. All right. Okay, so I want to talk to you folks about ideas around reducing team level work in process. So one of the best teams I ever worked with was a mainframe team at CA Technologies back before they were acquired by Broadcom. This was one of the teams that the rest of the organization used when they needed something quickly. The team's typical work in process for backlog items was 1.5. Now that's not 1.5 backlog items per person. That was 1.5 backlog items in progress for the entire team. They would typically get a story done from design to integrated, deployment ready, and accepted within quality within a day or two. They were that quick. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an experienced transformation consultant. I worked with a lot of different types of companies, including banking, insurance, and energy. I got 20 years combined experience in various roles, and I help organizations create better customer value delivery and deeper engagement with their employees through collaboration, communication, and continuous improvement. So let me tell you a little bit more about this team. How did this team become so successful? Well, as soon as, and some of these ideas may be familiar to you, but I'm going to introduce probably one or two that you may not be familiar with. So as soon as they started working on a backlog item, everybody had a pretty clear idea of what needed to be done and consistently collaborated to help make it happen. The team was also dedicated to spending time in retrospectives to reflect and improve. So the thing is, having the team members work on the same thing at the same time reduced WIP and increased throughput. What I see with some teams out there is that they maintain their silos. So, they've got folks that are doing design, they've got folks that are doing programming, they got folks that are doing testing, and there seems to be a handoff from group to group to group. And I would argue that is the slowest way to do, or not the slowest way, but a very slow way to do things. What would it look like if the tester were writing tests at the same time the developers are writing their code, at the same time the design work's going on, at the same time they're writing deployment scripts, right? And that's what this team basically did. So the ideal in my mind is radical collaboration and working. We're asking for radical collaboration throughout the work that's being done. Part of this is aligning on at the beginning when they start working on something as to the purpose, what needs to be done, and what people will work on. So I can talk to you about the culture and how dedicated they were to being great, which is where I usually would go because that's my passion as an agile coach. But today I'm going to talk to you folks actually about some tactics. So one of the things that they did was have an initial discussion regarding the backlog item. So there was a collaborative meeting whenever they started working on a user story or backlog item to help get everybody on the same page. The benefits of that was they were able to recall the details just in time. Everybody was aligned on everything. Because what I find is sometimes groups will refine a user story, then promptly forget about it. And then everybody's kind of like scrambling to try to remember what happened. Well, this is a great way to get everybody on the same page. So as soon as they started working on the story during the sprint, they would collaborate on it. They would do some shared sense making around it as well. Anything that would be a last minute change, everybody would become aware of. And there was just in time decision making that was done as well that everybody was aligned to. One of the methods that they use to do this is mind mapping. I'm kind of curious, and just verbally shout out for me. Is there anybody here that is not familiar with mind mapping and how that works? Okay, just in case, let me go ahead and kind of show you an example of mind mapping. So I use this tool called XMind. You can use other tools as well. And basically what they would do is they would talk about the various different things in the user story or the backlog item that they were working on. Now, this isn't one of their actual stories. This is something I just made up to kind of illustrate the point. Mind mapping is pretty easy, though. What you can do is just kind of go ahead and add topics in. So I could say, okay, maybe they need to track information about servers, right? And be aware and discuss the team about what servers they're going to be using at what time. So server 1 for testing, etc. You can see how quick and easy it is for me to add things in. During that initial story meeting, that's what they would do. They would talk about things like, what are the acceptance criteria? What are the testing concerns? What are the deployment concerns regarding this? Okay. made it just real easy for them to be able to go in and, talk about this stuff. So let me get back to here. I apologize from the current slide. There we go. Okay. So mind mapping is cool. It's one of the ways to handle non-structured information. And I found it to be useful for discussions where you want to gather and classify information visually when it comes in via conversation or other non-standard means. It's also very useful for brainstorming. But the key is here, they would all get on the same page by doing this. Once everybody was on the same page, they'd be able to work simultaneously on this stuff. The testers would be writing the unit tests at the same time and the automated tests at the same time the developers were working. Everybody knew what needed to be done. And then we keep that mind map associated with the story going forward, just in case they need to review it sometime in the future. So that was kind of cool as well. The other thing is they would have consistent communication that they would do. Everybody had the same priority, which means that everybody had the same focus. So handoffs occurred very, very quickly. It was fun to actually watch this group. I stood by the set of cubicles that they were in, and not everybody was in those cubicles, some were remote, but I stood by and just watched them one point. It was fun to watch. Let me give you one example of a conversation. Hey, John, are you done yet with the software? Yeah, give me 2 minutes. And then 2 minutes, come back and say, okay, I'm all done. All right, I'm gonna run the automated test. Hey, John, it failed. You screwed up. It's giving me an error. Now, that was a joke. They ribbed each other pretty consistently. It was a friendly kind of ribbing. Okay, hold on. I know how to fix it. After a minute or two, you would go and do it. And then you'd fix it and say, okay, try again. All right, looks good. Great. I think Doug handled the deployment script. Awesome. I'll touch base with Susan for her to do the review on it. Like, things would happen that quickly. The handoffs were just real quick, right? And because of that, their work in process was really low. And because of it, they were able to do the work. The throughput was incredible as well. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about culture. Sorry, I got to do it, right? The key is, if done well, there's a longer-term impact on the culture and effectiveness when they work this way. There's a deeper sense of teamwork. They had clarity on alignment on things. They had focus. Everybody was focused on the same thing. The other thing that this group had was really good retrospectives. I actually acted not as Agile coach, but as Scrum Master for this team, or team coach. And I remember that when I started working with them, I scheduled an hour-long retrospective. And one of the team members came up to me and said, I can't believe you scheduled an hour-long retrospective. What's wrong with you? We always go an hour and a half. That's when I fell in love with the team, okay? Because they were really dedicated to improvement. And that kind of culture that they had breeded success, and that kind of success breeded an awesome culture as well. So it was a hand-in-hand thing, right? So my premise, again, is building collaboration and alignment through these ideas, such as team organized story discussion, mind mapping, just-in-time conversations, and retrospectives, can help with throughput and WIP. Helping teams see how they work collaboratively and simultaneously to increase throughput and deliver to line work could be very helpful.
2 minutes.
Yep. Now, your mileage may vary, but it worked well with this team. All right. So teamwork is the secret that makes common people achieve uncommon results. So a little about mind mapping. Two of the tools, or the tools that you can use. Xmind is what I use, but there's a whole bunch of other tools that are out there. And by the way, for those of you using Miro and Mural, they both support mind mapping as well, in case you want to learn more about that. So again, thank you for your time. Again, my name is Ken Roberts. If you want to reach or talk to me, I can be reached at ken@betterwaysagility.com, or you touch base on my website, or reach out to me via LinkedIn. And that's all I've got for now. So thank you. Were there any questions or anything?
I don't have a question, but that was really impressive. And there's a lot to absorb, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How big was the team? I'm curious.
It varied in size. We started out with like 7 or 8 and eventually got down to 5 because of various reasons. But it was awesome. You know, we had an architect, we had a developer, or actually 2 developers. We had an automated tester, And I'm saying these were the main skills. They shifted off. They were very T-shaped people, if you know that terminology. They were able to basically overlap in terms of capabilities an awful lot. And the other thing that we had, which was awesome with this team, was we had a product owner that was deeply engaged. So they could go to the PO and say, hey, we've got a story that we want you to review. We're done with it. That product owner was used to being available within hours. You know, they could say, okay, I'll meet you at 2:00. I'll go ahead and accept this stuff after I see it. And sure enough, it would always be high quality, and she would. So, yep. Cool. I'm probably at time, so it's probably your turn, Mr. Steve.
Sure. And warning, you will now learn my real name. Dun, dun, dun. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, then. Let me start my timer. Go. Apprentices, a business case. Also a forcing function for learning and improving, by Stephen Thomas, my real name. So this sort of started with my current manager, Jacqueline Damiano. She had this idea to build apprentices, and she got Verizon to pony up money, and we're educating apprentices while paying them a living wage so they can become great technologists. This was about 2 years ago. We've since been through other iterations of this, and what I want to talk about is why this makes business sense and some of the learnings we've had with that. So first, the business case, right? Show me the money, right? So if you think about it, oops, sorry. No, that's fine. Diversity we talked about, you know, in the code of conduct, you know, Ken said, we value diversity of ideas, diverse idea representation to empower the Agile community and enterprises, and believe that everyone is better off when more ideas are shared. We also want people who look more like our customers. So not only do you have cultural diversity, but economic diversity, and different ways of thinking create better thoughts. Making the wrong hire can cost you a lot, like 30 to 50% of salary, plus recruiting fees. Hiring apprentices, there is no like sort of recruiting fee. We'll talk about that a little more. It's a lower cost paying apprentices. They're lower, at least initially. Over time, they get really, really good, and then they're worth more. They tend to stay with you longer. It's good public relations. Oh, and you help people who are less fortunate than yourself, which makes you seem like a nice person. And I could really use all the help I could get there. So, but what about college versus apprentices? Why not college? Okay, I got 4 kids to put through college, and the average cost of 4 years is going to be about, anyway, has been and will be about $120 to $240K per kid. So how can we load kids with all this mountain of debt? There's got to be another way. There is. You pay them a living wage. They can go to college later on the company's dime. Plus, there's certain things. I'm very into computer science education. I've seen how they teach it at college, and they do not teach test-driven development. They do not teach pair programming or mob programming. Everybody's working individually. So there's a lot of skills that are not really taught in college that we need to relearn. So rather than paying, you know, $120 to $240K, what if we actually paid them to learn? It's a win-win. We can mold them in the ways we want, but you have to do it right. And there are lots of things around that. So we're always looking for finding talent. It's hard to find good talent. It's also hard to recruiting. I gotta fix my spelling there. Finding talent is like a constant search for people, right? I don't want to find talent. I want to build talent. I want to cultivate talent and help them grow. Now, when you're finding talent, it's an interview process. Do they have the right buzzwords on their resume? Do they know C++ or C# or TensorFlow or Docker or Kubernetes, blah, 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 blah. And people will get completely cut out when, you know, 5 years from now, the next big thing will be something else that they'll be looking on their resumes. So instead of that, let's look for character. sorry, I did an image search on character and SpongeBob came up, but I think it fits. He's nice. He works well with other people. He communicates. He works really, really hard and cares about the pride and that really high quality Krabby Patty for his customers and make his customers happy. I want more SpongeBobs. But I mean, seriously, we should be hiring for character. These skills can be learned and taught. Pair and mob programming. So when I interview them, I recruit them, I don't just ask them some interview personal questions. We pair program with them. And this is what we do when we're mentoring them too, right? And we mob program them. So like the rest of the team they're going to work with gets a feel for them. I'm going to experiment with mob programming with a bunch of apprentices I'm potentially hiring as a next step, next experiment. Demos. No PowerPoint. I do not want PowerPoint. I prefer code because that's what they're building. And not only code, I want to see running software that they can talk through and explain what it does for the user, why the user cares about it. And then I'll go through the code and ask them questions. Why did you do this? Why did you make that decision? Getting them to start being reflective and thinking about, is there more than one way to do it? Can we do this differently? And when other people see the code, they can coach them and learn. And frankly, I had this one apprentice who did something the other day, and I'm like, I never thought of that. That's a much better way than what I've been doing. So we all learn from each other. You learn together. It is really growing and developing and learning together. Pushing to production within 2 weeks of them starting. How many people have you hired, experienced developers who push to production within 2 weeks? I'm using this as a forcing function, a constraint that drives positive behavior or prevents mistakes. So what does saying my apprentice is going to push to production in 2 weeks? In order to make that happen, I would need to give them a build environment with the appropriate keys, for APIs, databases, etc. day one. Imagine I have an environment with all the right libraries. Boom, you're ready to go. I don't have to spend 2 weeks to a month setting up my PC or my environment. You would need simple projects queued up for them to push to production. If you're going to do this right, you can't have them sit there and do nothing. You need automated tests, unit tests, and you need to make it safe to deploy. So if something went wrong, it could easily be turned off, feature flags, etc. Practice more, suck less. This is how we learn and improve. This is how we create new habits. Retrospectives daily. At the end of meetings, I ask them how it go. I ask them, what am I doing wrong that would make your life better and this education better? And I have been blown away by how stupid I've been. So I really appreciate that. And I thank them for that. Teach them to experiment. Toyota Kata. The scientific method is really what you're teaching. And the coaching kata. What's the target condition? What's the next small step that we want to get to? What's the actual condition now? What obstacles are you running into? What's the next step and how quickly can we see? And all of this is really science. It's teaching them to define good hypotheses and teaching them to fail, making failure an okay thing to talk about. Why? Every fact in science was hard won and has a trail of failure behind it. These failures shouldn't be hidden. They should be featured. First, because it's how science actually works. And second, because if the likes of Newton, Leibniz, etc., could have failed to grasp something, it might just occur to them, hey, maybe I'm not so dumb after all. And I need to hear that. I tell them it's okay to fail. It's not okay to learn from failure. I want them to tell me about failures. And when they do, I say thank you, because it's hard to make them. Radical candor. It's hard for new kids to talk and speak up because they're worried about, I've got to make a job. I've got to get a thing. I tell them, I want to be corrected. Please correct me. I want you to speak up. They don't initially. It took this one person 6 months, and I said something, and she blurted out, "That's stupid." And I realized she's right. And I said, thank you. And I said why she was right. And now she's opening up. I've also gamified it because some people won't talk. And I'll say, okay, so-and-so said something, point, point, point. Find ways to get them to talk and open up and make it safe. You care about them. You're not going to ridicule them for talking up. You need to help them build support networks. It takes a village. You need to line up subject matter experts with the heart of a teacher. People who know Git, AWS, your cloud environment, how to work with security, etc. Role models, people who look like them and have their backgrounds and experience. You want to connect them to those people, not just like one manager. And you want to help them connect to others and find their own seniors. I have one guy who's really interested in accessibility, Martin. I connected him with a group of people who were passionate about that within Verizon, and they are connecting and doing wonderfully. So encourage them, not just connect within the community, but connect outside the community. Attend Princeton Agility. There's this Canton Coders. They do coding sessions for people. I connect them to them. I have some stories, but I only have 9 seconds. I'd be happy to tell you about afterwards. So I just want to show you something real quick. You want to send these kids off as a virus into the world, right? At first, there's only a couple of them, and you've got them trained in this new way of working, agile, retrospectives, and eventually they start infecting things. Oh, and one infection goes to another department, and it starts infecting that thing. Now, the reality is some of them will be killed because they think differently. But if you train enough of these poor apprentices and you support them, send them off as viruses into the world and make the world a better place. Thank you.
I love the simulation.
Questions?
Where can we sign up for the program?
That is a good question, and I cannot. So right now we're partnering with a company whose name I am completely blanking on. Are you in the Slack?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so look for Steve Thomas or Stephen Thomas or send a general message, and I will tell you the company we're working with. We work with people who run boot camps. The first time we did this, we actually got people from a homeless shelter and like Salvation Army. But they're really hardworking people. I mean, you want people who are hungry. Like some of the most amazing people I've met was when I taught in Haiti. Like if I could have brought them back to America or made them successful, they would have been rock stars because they needed the money and they work their butts off. Work ethic is key.
So, Steve, about 5 years ago, I visited a dojo, Verizon dojo that was Piscataway, I think.
Yes, yes.
Is that still working? What are your experiences?
So I was in the dojo. The dojo is a wonderful, immersive learning environment where for 6 weeks, you learn not on some toy project, but on your own work. You know, and when you come in, you have 2 goals. One is like the business objective, but you also have to have learning objectives. And we run 2.5-day sprints where we run them through Scrum for 2.5 days. We do grooming, we have Kanban boards, we do respectives every 2.5 days, and they have to do demos every 2.5 days. Because to learn new ways of working, you know, brain science tells us it's, so if you go out in the snow, if you're in the middle of Minnesota in the snow and there's an outhouse out there, you know, when you have to go to the bathroom, there's no path. You just walk the one path. But the more you walk that path, you're going to keep walking that path. Your brain is sort of the same way. You've got habits that are hard to unlearn because you've always walked those paths. So the one thing we try and do in the dojo is learning through repetition with coaches to guide you, to train you on that new path, because it takes all those repetitions to go through. Yeah, I could go on for a long time about dojos, but
Thanks.
we can have an open space on that if you want.
Mhm. All right. So,
Hey, Fernando, I guess I'll turn it over to you, right, to help us through running the open space.
All right. So I'm going to give an introduction because this is the first time that we are doing it. It's going to be like an experiment. So let me share my screen. Question, if I share it this way, is it too small? Does it make, can see that?
Readable.
I can see it.
All right. So open space is a meeting format that was originally created by Harrison Owen. He's a cultural transformation consultant who in the 80s, he used to organize conferences. But he was very frustrated because after 1 year of discussing with potential presenters, speakers, dealing with big egos, they wanted to be the keynote speakers, all of that, he got feedback after the conference that everything went very well, but they got most of the value during the coffee breaks. So he decided to have a full conference that will be just like coffee breaks, where everybody will come with a topic that they wanted to discuss. In the first few minutes, they will create the agenda for the full conference. So that became the open space technology. He wrote a book about that later. Here we see a definition by Daniel Mesnick, who is an agile coach, very active in Connecticut and New York groups. He's using this method to start a transformation in an organization, inviting leadership. Now, how this works? I'm going to tell you a bit about the mechanics. I took this picture in 2019. It was an open space in New York. If you have a topic that you feel strongly that you would like to talk or to learn or discuss, you can suggest a topic. You can write that topic in a card or in a virtual card that we're going to do right now. And you present that topic to the audience, what are you going to talk about, what do you want to discuss. It doesn't have to be a formal presentation. It can be a formal presentation, but it can also be a discussion. We put that in a schedule, and that's how we form the agenda for the meeting. There are a few rules and recommendations. Let me talk about these principles. There is one law and 5 principles. The law of the 2 feet. That means that if you are not collaborating or getting any value from one of the discussions, you are free to leave and go to another session, different session. So the responsibility is on you to get some value. If you don't feel that you're collaborating or learning, just move to a different session. No one will get offended. No one is interested of all of the topics all of the time. Now, you can also do like a bumblebee, like cross-pollinating across different sessions. Or if you are new to agility, you just want to see what different groups are talking about, you can do like the butterfly. That's perfectly fine, as long as you're getting something about that. If you don't want to join any discussion, you can go to the main room and you find other butterflies. Maybe you can start a conversation with them. Now, about the principles is that whoever comes to your session, they are the right people. That means that if you are making decisions on those sessions, there is no excuse that you cannot make a decision because someone didn't join. Because if that person didn't join, it's because he or she didn't care about that topic that strongly to join. And whatever happens in that discussion is the only thing that could happen. Whenever it starts is the right time. So that means that, well, if you need to spend a few minutes organizing who's going to take notes, who's going to present, that's perfectly fine. You start when you're ready, and when it's over, it's over. That means that if the session is scheduled for 30 minutes, and you reach to a conclusion or answer your questions in 10 minutes, you're done. You don't need to waste everybody's time over there. You can move to a different session. This last principle, I think, was added by Daniel Messick because it was not one of the original principles, is that wherever it happens is the right place. So it could be in a corridor, in a hall, or in Zoom. Here I'm going to share the link to this mural. But if you don't have access to mural, don't worry. You can, and if you want to propose a topic, please give me the title, your name. I'm going to open the marketplace now.